Political parties control the selection of committee members through their own steering committees, and members often remain on the same committee throughout a career. The most senior member, majority party member, is usually chosen as chairperson, and the most senior minority party member is chosen as ranking committee member. The power of Congress is exercised through the parties. When a party wins the majority of the seats, it controls the legislative process, including heading committees and selecting congressional leaders. The House is led by the Speaker, majority and minority leaders, and party whips. Speaker of the House is the most powerful member of the House of Representatives, charged with the overall control, direction, and flow of information. The Speaker does the following: presides over meetings, appoints members of joint committees and conference committees, schedules legislation for floor action, decides points of order and interprets the rules, and refers bills and resolutions to the appropriate standing committees. Second in line is the majority leader of the House. The majority leader works toward cohesion among party members and assists the Speaker in passing the majority party's legislation. Primary responsibility of the minority leader of the House is to push for the party's legislative proposals and act as a source of loyal opposition to the majority party. Excuse me. If the president is a member of the minority party, the minority leader of the House speaks on the president's behalf. And both the majority and minority parties have whips whose job it is to assist their party leaders and to encourage party loyalty among members. In truly ceremonial positions, the vice president is considered the presiding officer of the Senate, but only appears on rare occasions, and the president pro tem, the longest-running majority member, fills in when needed. In reality, the Senate Majority Leader is the most powerful leader of the chamber, directing the entire legislative program. The Senate Minority Leader leads the other party in its initiatives. Some legislation requires negotiating, some pass easily, and some get mired in partisan gridlock. A bill can be introduced in either the House or the Senate, often in both, though a money bill must originate in the House. The bill then moves through a formal procedure of committee reviews, hearings, and markups. It is scheduled for debate and has to be passed by each House. If two versions contain different provisions, it will be sent to a conference committee for final revision, approved again by both Houses, then sent to the President to sign or veto. In 1922, the President was required to create an executive budget. Until the 1970s, the budget was disjointed and unwieldy, broken down into multiple bills that had to be debated, revised, and passed. Then the Budget Impoundment and Control Act of 1974 required that the President spend the money that Congress has appropriated and that Congress examine total national taxing and spending following the path of the budget cycle. Federal fiscal year begins October 1st and ends September 30th. 18 months before the fiscal year starts, the executive branch begins preparing the budget. The Office of Management and Budget conducts a spring review to gather agency requests for funding. It also does a fall review a year before the relevant fiscal year begins at the start of the budget season. When it cuts back agency requests, it begins preparing the executive budget. In January, the President submits a detailed budget to Congress so it can be included in the economic report of the President, which estimates all the government's revenues to be generated and expenditures to be made. Things are different in the years a new president is elected and inaugurated. The outgoing president leaves in the middle of the budget cycle, and a new president is forced to make key decisions within months of taking office, so the budget is compressed into the first few months of the new administration. Here's a look at the budget cycle. Talks about what we It just illustrates what was in the slide before. In January, the President reviews and approves the OMB budget and sends it to Congress. Authorization is the committee's formal statement that funding is available to an agency. Appropriation is the final passage of a spending bill specifying the amount of funds to be allocated to an agency. Authorization is a statement that funding is available. Appropriation is the final passage of a spending bill specifying the amount of funds to be allocated to an agency. Congress is supposed to pass the first budget resolution in May to set overall revenue and spending goals. That determines the size of the deficit or surplus. It is scheduled to pass the second budget resolution in September to set binding limits on taxes and spending. Congress rarely makes the October 1st deadline. It normally passes a continuing resolution. That's a temporary measure that allows agencies to continue operating while Congress works to pass the budget. This tactic grew into extreme measures in the 1980s and climaxed in the 90s when non-essential government functions shut down for almost a month. Since then, Congress has attempted to limit continuing resolutions to their original purpose. And finally, to make a difference, learn about your representatives. Why should you care? Because legislation affects your life. What can you do? Email or mail your concerns to your representatives and do performance evaluations. Interest groups evaluate members of Congress. That concludes the lecture for Chapter 9. Please check under course documents in Blackboard for the remainder of the assignments in this chapter.